Welcome, fellow typhoon travelers. The storm has now become Force 10 out of Navarone, and every single person on the planet is aware of it and is deeply affected by its glandative power. I'm Chris Thompson, the 2IC of the world's foremost band of braid brigands, peacekeeper pirates, and mesmeric marauders. And we are bringing 5-star content and real-world transformation, one hypnotist at a time. So put down that window sash and fasten your ankle belt. And now, entering the Hypnoticon, hailing from Manchester, England via Toronto, Canada, please welcome the 64-year-old hypnotic superchild who could live on nothing but Thai and Indian cuisine for the rest of his life.
True.
The man who invented the lemon cobra gag. Here, direct from Hypno North in Minden, Ontario, Mike Mandel.
Yes, Christopher, I'm back again, and I am direct from Hypno North. As you know,
You drove up from your down south,
from our cottage in the Canadian wilderness, right on the shores of Bob Lake, the spring-fed, pristine, overflowing lake right now.
Yes.
But I'm here in Hypno East because we care about you, and
That's
we wanted
right.
to get this darn podcast done.
Absolutely, because when we're on vacation, it's very difficult to work.
And let's face it, Chris, most of our lives are vacation.
All right. So what do we got on tap for today?
I thought we should just mention about Hypno Thoughts Live because that is looming.
It is. Well, let's definitely just give that a quick promo.
Yeah,
so
real fast.
Our third year going to Hypno Thoughts Live in August in Las Vegas, htlive.net, and you can check out all the awesome stuff that's going on. The tickets are reasonably priced. The entire conference is essentially one price except for pre or post-conference classes that anyone might want to take. We're doing a 2-day pre-conference course this year.
We are.
And it's going to be phenomenal. It's just a really great conference.
It's the best hypnosis conference on earth. It's the most inclusive. If you're into weird hypnosis stuff, this is the place. If you're into really stalwart, staged, serious stuff, this is the place. Hypno Thoughts Live, Las Vegas. Check it out. You will love it.
Absolutely. Okay, so what is on tap for today?
Buddy, before we get into this, I want to talk to you about something I read recently. You know how one of the dangers we are running into with people who are so running their brains at such light speed because we're accustomed to 3 seconds on a television program, there's a cut and so on.
Actually, Mike, just to elaborate on that point. Yeah, I have noticed myself just over the last, say, 3-4 years, my attention span, my ability, it seems, to read a lengthy article is next to zero.
Yes, it's true.
Because of Twitter and Facebook and things like that, I want bite-sized chunks.
Buddy, you are so right about that. And let's start that thought again. The average attention span of a North American, Western European now is 6 seconds.
Yeah, that's
before
brutal.
we want something changed. And you think about it, man. I know I sound like an old guy saying this, and I am a man of advanced age. Anyway, whatever I was saying. The thing is, when I was a kid, when I was a lad back in England, even in Canada, we watched television and it was black and white. There was not a lot of stimulation, and programs and sitcoms and stuff to be single camera shots that would go on for several minutes, character development. So I'm not saying that's better. I'm not saying we have to watch black and white TV. I'm just explaining the overstimulation right now is incredible, how it's affecting people's focus. We're going to be talking about focus today a lot. That's one of our main points, how to improve focus, why focus can change your life, why you get what you focus on. But the weird thing is, I just read an article, and there was a medical study that I've actually got the link for you to check out sometime here, Chris. And it's how people who are taking Tylenol, which is acetaminophen, it's in about 600 different products, cold medicines and so on.
Oh, absolutely. It's Tylenol, like the number one painkiller.
It's the number one. It's not very good as an anti-inflammatory agent. I prefer Advil for that, or, ibuprofen. But Tylenol reduces empathy.
You're kidding.
Which is so interesting. This study, the way they tested it was they would get, I guess, college-age kids or whoever for the test. They would be administered acetaminophen. Now, so we're not saying anything but brand name Tylenol, just acetaminophen, the generic name. And then they would watch things that happened to people, bad things, and rate how sorry they felt for the person.
Mike, I took some Tylenol this morning, and I just don't care.
I can't seem to care. I just keep trying, but somehow I just can't care. But
honestly,
it's like it numbs their emotional response to other people. And it causes a reduction in empathy. And I find this stuff very fascinating as a hypnotist because You think about it, Chris. We are already losing the ability to judge micro expressions, people's facial expressions, which build empathy through mirror neurons and so on.
Right. And that's probably just due to lack of human exposure.
Absolutely.
In terms of cumulative hours over whatever period of time.
Any kind of screen. And it astounds me. We are losing human contact and we are losing empathy because we cannot gauge facial expressions. I said my wife's niece, one of them, was constantly Facebooking and texting and, different messages to her cousin in Minden. And then when the two of them were finally in the same room together, they
don't know what to do.
They couldn't talk to each other.
Awkward.
I saw it happen. Awkward. I couldn't figure it out. So if empathy is being destroyed, not just by exposure to extremely rapid image changes and so on, if we're adding acetaminophen to the mix as something that removes or destroys empathy, we got to be really careful as a human race. I don't know where this is all going. If we stop caring about each other, what kind of therapists are we going to be, for one thing?
Well, yeah. So I suppose if all we do is text people and take a lot of Tylenol, then we're going to be pretty crappy therapists.
Well, yeah. And back up to the thing you said about how you found in your own life, your attention span, if it needs to, you get bored quickly, right?
Yeah, I would find that if I was reading something, let's say in the past, 1,000-word article or 1,200-word article on a topic that I care about, I'd be, oh yeah, this is interesting. I'm reading it all the way to the end. Great, wonderful. Now, after about 100 words, I'm thinking, okay, get to the point. What are you saying here?
Yeah, next. And that boring.
And I catch myself consciously, Mike, doing this, going, what has happened to me? What's going on?
Well, it is rewiring your brain. It's self-administered neuroplasticity. And I like to think that I'm immune to this, but I'm not.
We're not. None of us are immune to any of it.
And I don't like being being available by phone all the time or text messages when I'm away. And I've been on a fairly extensive vacation. I still have a week left as of right now.
Yeah.
And the first 2 days, when I get up to Bob Lake and the calm and the ravens and the fishing, not that I'm doing any fishing, but all of these things, the great outdoors, there were 3 deer in town yesterday. They had to stop traffic as they walked through my dentist's office. Well,
nice.
Not the office, but it's his lawn. But the thing is, the first 2 days, Chris, my brain, I feel almost an anxiety. It's not anxiety. It's too strong a word.
I'm so glad you said that, though. I understand.
What, you want me to be anxious?
No, I really don't care. I took Tylenol this morning, remember? No. No.
Oh, we're at work right now.
I was going to ask you if you think this short attention span thing, this constant online switching on and off like a crazy monkey.
Yeah.
The TV shows you talked about with multiple camera angles flashing back and forth, all this quick change of attention, this quick change of focus. If it's like a drug and we get addicted to that.
Okay, now you're onto something, and we have not discussed this at all.
No.
When I did my first course in the great courses, it was on neuroscience, and it was, I believe, an MIT neuroscientist or Stanford neuroscientist, and he was really good. He said he was talking about coffee, and to make it short, he said he drinks a couple of cups of coffee every day, and he said, but what happens is, even though it has no harm, in fact, there's evidence now that good quality coffee without solvents and so on in it actually produces antioxidants and it can be good for you. But he said that if you don't have coffee, you start getting a headache. He said your brain begins to expect that caffeine molecule to be there. And I said to my wife yesterday, I think this whole, not the acetaminophen thing, but the overstimulation thing, I think it's the same.
Your brain
expect that kind
change.
Of extreme stimulation. And when I suddenly go somewhere like a lake and I can sit outside and doze in a chair and look at the lake, the first couple of days, my brain's going, what's wrong? There should be some kind of thing happening here. Something's got to be flashing in his eyes.
It's, I was going to say mental detox, but what's a better term? Mental fast.
Wow, that's interesting.
We talk about intermittent fasting and things like that. Fasting meaning not eating for a certain period of time. That's what it seems like to me. It's a mental fast. You're allowing your body to kind of reset. I don't know if that's...
No, it makes at least permitting the brain to reset. But guys, just remember to take breaks. Take breaks, and you may find it hard. But anyway, before we get into the whole thing about focus, I want to talk to you about word whiskers, because this has been an ongoing thing at my cottage for a few days now. And I say cottage.
Which one are you working on now?
It's not me.
Okay.
It's all around me. So at the cottage cabin, which is what it really is, I kept hearing these word whiskers, and word whiskers are filler. And it was really the brilliant writer and thinker Marilyn Vos-Savant, who brought this to my attention. She said the English language is the most precise language on earth, arguably. There's approximately 1 million words if you count technical terms. Mm-hmm. And you can make shades of meaning in English that you cannot in any other language. And we should see language, especially as hypnotists, as our toolkit, precision tools to get specific results. Unless, of course, we're doing the Milton model, in which case all bets are off.
Right.
But things like word whiskers, where we get stuck on a phrase or stuck on a word as filler, are really not very useful. And you need to,
I mean,
well, is sort of the low end of it. But a typical one is, So we went there, and he was like, sitting there, and, every time someone says, I respond with, I know.
I know. Yeah. It's the attack
really
of
the
filler phrase attack. Yeah, I know. I do. I know. Yeah.
Filler phrase attack.
Filler
we just
phrase
got
attack.
a brand new intervention. That's so funny, man. So yeah, man, jump on the filler phrase attack. That's great. The one that drives me nuts the most is, I mean. Well, maybe light bothers. Hey,
how do you jump in on that? I'm nice cough there.
Sorry, buddy. I got a tickle.
Oh, he's got, well, while Mike is clearing his throat,
I'm back.
I'll just avoid using filler phrases here for a moment. Those days of glory. And,
yeah. So the, teenage girls saying like.
I caught myself doing that.
And I was like sitting there, and he was like looking at me. That drives me insane. That's a bad one. But I mean is really, really annoying. To be able to speak without saying I mean is something that Heather's uncle cannot do.
How do you want to jump in on that? Do you really mean it?
I don't know. I haven't got the intervention on that. I'm open to suggestions.
Okay, we'll wait our listener feedback.
Yeah, of course. You mean it. That's why you're going. Oh no, he's not doing the I mean. The one he's stuck on right now is anyway. Anyway, so the truck arrived and we're sitting outside. Anyway, so I went up to him and anyway, he said, anyway, every single sentence starts with anyway.
Anyway seems like a recentering phrase.
It's like a reset.
If you get onto some sort of tangent.
Right.
And then you catch yourself, because I do this. You catch yourself on the tangent.
You can rein yourself back in.
Anyway, what I meant by that was la 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 blah blah blah, whatever you want to say. I know you hate it when people do that.
Or anyway, to get back on topic. Yeah, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yada yada yada.
But if you're using it as a continuance of your expression,
right? It's terrible. Eliminate it. Eliminate. Eliminate. I mean. Eliminate. Right. So who's there?
Or
right?
yeah, no.
And what do you think? Right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. That's another one. That's not a word whisker. That drives me insane. But the one that bugged me years ago was our next door neighbor. She was incapable of saying anything without pre-framing it with, you know what?
You know what?
Everything. You know what? We went out last night and went to the restaurant. How was the food? You know what? It was really, really good. And we had how was the beef? You know what? They put really, and it got so funny. I heard her and her live-in boyfriend have an argument once, and she said to him, you know what? Shut up. I
think you've told me this one before. And you know what? I do. Your intervention is, I do know.
I do know. Yeah. But anyway, I mean,
that's okay. That's a recentering.
Let's put an end to word whiskers.
I'll accept the use of anyway there, Mike. You were about to move on to the next topic.
Thank you. How do we get rid of these damn things, Chris? How do we do it?
Well, I think it's the same as with any of these problems in public speaking or communication. You become aware of it, right? You've taught me that. Once you become aware of it, first you're aware of it after you've done it. Well, first you're not even aware that you've done it. Then you learn about it and you say, oh, I just did that. You catch yourself after you've done it. Then you catch yourself as you're doing it. Then you catch yourself before you do it. And my favorite technique for all of this stuff is when you want to avoid the word whiskers, slow down and give yourself permission to pause.
Yeah, pausing is good.
Use a pause. You'll always sound, I'll give you a word whisker.
Pause then?
No, I'm going to get, my father has developed this word whisker. It's not a word. It's more of a throat sound whisker, if you can describe it that way. And I was explaining it to my wife why it annoys me. I was explaining to my wife why it annoys me so much and how instead of using the word whisker or throat noise whisker, if you simply pause instead, you sound so much smarter.
What's the throat noise go like?
Well, let's say he's stuck on what to say next. And kind of like that.
Like a delay noise?
Yeah, like a throat.
Oh, Gus Grissom used to do that. Listen,
Yeah.
I heard the worst one, and with this we're going to move on.
Okay.
You know, Chris, when I tell these stories, you used to think I was exaggerating.
No,
and
now I know.
Now you know when you followed up that if anything, I'm underselling it sometimes.
Almost always.
All right, thank you. My wife and I, maybe 10 years ago, we're in small town Aberfoyle, Ontario or something. We're in a small town. And a woman came in. Oh, shoot, you're not going to believe me. Serious? It was Port Perry.
No way.
I know exactly where it was. It was a little restaurant, coffee shop sort of thing. We went in, and a man and his wife in their 30s, let's say, came in with a woman who was clearly the mother of the guy.
Okay.
Elderly, probably my age now. And they sat at the table, and when they sat down, the elderly woman went, what is that? This little musical sound. And I sort of ignored it, thought she's humming something. And then they said, okay, here's the menu. And they give it to her. And the one girl said, okay, here, Mom, you take that. She said, okay, thanks. I was going to see what I'm going to have. And she did this little musical sound again. And of course, by now, I have to look. So I have to see what she looks like just to get annoyed, right? Yeah. So Heather's looking at me, getting really irritated quickly. But I'm an auditory, so I'm actually angrier than her. So I turn and look at this woman. The woman nods and smiles and says, I'm not kidding. It was exactly like that. To this day, if I walk into a room and go, my wife says, shut up. She knows right away what I'm doing. And this woman did it all through lunch. And I guess her daughter and her son and her daughter-in-law had just learned to live with it. It must have been at one time, Chris, she cleared her throat or something, or something, and
it's become anchored in some way.
And it's just, Anyway, okay, let's move on.
How many more times are you going to do that?
I'm not going to do it anymore.
I'm really wondering.
For what it's worth, I'm actually beginning to annoy myself. So I want to talk about focus. I want to talk about the power of focus, the strength of focus, how it can make a huge difference in exactly everything.
And it's worth pointing out that since we're hypnotists and we teach hypnosis and hypnotists listen to this podcast, although non-hypnotists do as well, focus is an important element of hypnosis.
Right.
Obviously, you can't have hypnosis without focus.
Right. In fact, hypnosis can logically be argued as is an enhancing of focus.
Yes.
And you're bringing in unconscious resources and so on. There is a tremendous thing that happens when our attention gets really, don't get your knees so close to mine. When you get really, really focused on something. For example, if someone has a mosquito bite, if you focus their attention on it, it will itch. It's just the way our brains work. And
well, didn't you do a 1-minute metaphor on the cut that you had on your thumb?
That's right. I cut my thumb with an X-Acto knife. I can't remember what I was slicing, bits of plastic or something, and cut the edge of my thumb where it meets the nail. Not enough to need a Band-Aid, but enough to
just
like
really
sting
annoy you.
and throb. And it throbbed through the day and got worse and worse and worse. And I kept thinking, oh, shoot, is that getting infected? So at the end of the day, I put my reading glasses on. I looked at it, and there's nothing there. There was nothing. It was my other thumb I had cut.
Yeah.
And as soon as I realized that, the throbbing disappeared.
And since you had been focusing on this, you had manufactured the feeling.
Now, you know as well as I do, there's a certain sense that we get what we focus on. And Chris and I are empirical rationalists to a large degree.
Oh, yeah. Just focusing on something isn't going to make it.
We don't think the universe cooperates with us, but we do believe that the reticular activating system, the part of your brain that brings to your attention things that are important to you, brings to your conscious attention things that are important, your reticular activating system, your RAS, can be tuned. And an example is when I was a little boy, I had an awesome book called The Peterkin Papers. I love this book of short stories. And I thought many years later, when I was a full-grown adult, I thought, I'd love to have that book again. And I kept thinking about it and thinking about it. Guess what happened? My focus
saw it in a bookstore.
Yeah, my focus went on that book so much that my unconscious mind began to change my focus. It began to look for things dealing with that book. And I walked up Yonge Street in Toronto, the longest street in the world, one day in a rainy afternoon. It was a downpour. I pulled into a bookstore, which was the only store I could get out of the rain. Didn't want to order anything to eat. And within half a second, I just saw on the shelf in the corner of my eye, as I turned my head, I knew the Peterkin Papers was there, like 6 feet off the ground, off to my left, grabbed it. It was $2, had the book again. This is like 3 months after I really focused on it. I'd not seen it since I was about 10 or 12 years old. My brain had changed the information that was coming in insofar as it put some of it assigned to conscious awareness now.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Here's the way I would pitch it.
Do it, Mr. Engineer.
The book was there and would have been there regardless. the same situation would have happened. You would have ended up walking into that bookstore. But had you not been, or maybe you wouldn't have walked into the bookstore if you hadn't been tuning your mind to the idea of wanting that book, and somehow that drove you to choose that bookstore to enter. But regardless, the book would still be there. But if it wasn't important to you and you weren't thinking about it a lot, your unconscious would just present it to your conscious. It would filter it out from your consciousness, and you just go on with your day.
Right. And as Chris and I are NLP people as well, neuro-linguistic programming, we believe what George Miller said was right, that your conscious mind can only keep track of about 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information per second, meaning maybe as few as 5, which is me. I'm down at that end. And some people as many as 9, with 7 being the middle of the bell curve. And the bottom line is, though, your unconscious, apart from running your heart valve synchronization, 500 liver enzymes, calcitonin from your bloodstream to your bones, all of these things, when you blink, how you digest, when you feel sleepy, it's also processing about 3 to 20 million bits of conscious information per second. So it's only presenting to the illusion of your conscious mind about 7 at any given moment. Mm-hmm. If you focus intently on something and give it primacy, give it any importance in your unconscious, guess what? Your unconscious will begin to present to your conscious awareness the things that deal with that.
And if you decorate with things that remind you of that area of focus. When I say decorate, I mean that loosely. Let's say
I'm kind of wondering where you're going with
your
that.
Screensaver on your computer, your wallpaper on your iPad.
Oh, gotcha.
We're looking at the show notes on your iPad right here. When you hit the home button and there's that wallpaper that reminds you of something that you want to be focused on, that will help. If you have pictures, if you have notes, empowering questions that you stick to your mirror in your bathroom, whatever it is, something that will allow you to refocus more often on what you want, you'll be more likely to achieve it.
Right. And you're absolutely right, Chris. And the reason that happens is something called LTP. It's called long-term potentiation, meaning, or potentiationalism. You make it longer and longer. The whole thing is that if you focus intently for a long time, it's Hebb's law. Neurons tend to shake hands with each other. So neurons that are next to each other, when one fires and it fires the other one, it increases the predisposition for it firing again. Over time, it becomes permanent. And what I think is really, really interesting is, if you're bringing in different aspects of this on your screen, questions you're looking at,
I know.
You know what? Shut up. And you're putting on your screen and focusing on things, you'll suddenly recognize that it's jumped into your conscious awareness and your brain has offered you something. He said, look at that book over there. Or maybe you should ask him. And it will pick up snippets of things that will present this as being important. Remember I said I bought a 35 millimeter SLR camera years ago?
Oh, yeah. And then all of a sudden you start seeing camera ads
everywhere. You Canon, Nikon, Hasselblad, Minolta. It was just crazy. So this happens. It happens right away. And what's kind of interesting is we have lost a lot of focus. We're back to the short attention span that we spoke about a minute ago. And we're back to this because I read a whole study that MTV came in the 1980s. And when it did, with the song Video Has Killed the Radio Star, which was the Buggles, Video Killed the Radio Star.
Oh, we are horrible singers.
Yeah, I know. But they brought that in.
We admit it, so it's okay.
Do you know what people said, Chris? They said MTV will never last. It's just a fad.
Oh, yeah.
And it became a complete art form with 3-second cuts, which then got into TV shows, got into films. And the consequences are we uniformly have a lack of focus and a lack of attention now. And is it any wonder that people float through life and just wait for things to happen to them and become at effect instead of at cause?
It may be that humans by their nature don't have focus unless they force themselves to. And so they just, if you think, well, I don't know about any other animals out there, but I don't think other animals are consciously thinking about their lives and making plans. They're just sort of doing whatever they need to do. And then when they get hungry, they go find some food and then they go find something to keep them busy.
So what's the consequence of lack of focus in life?
Lack of growth.
Lack of growth in a cancer is good, though.
Yes, exactly. Now are you using clean language on me? No.
I'm just wondering. Like the consequence of lack of focus is what I just said. It's being at effect instead of being at cause. Life is happening to you instead of you taking the reins.
It's an interesting discussion because there are a lot of people who I think would be perfectly happy to just go along with their day and let whatever distract them, and then they enjoy it in the moment, and then they move on to the next thing. But in the long run, I'm not sure if it's going to give them the happiness that most people
I think
want.
long term, it's probably a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Like, you think about a relationship. If a relationship is on the rocks, how is focus going to help with that?
Well, actually, let's think back to the podcast we did probably over a year ago we discussed Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages.
Oh, yeah.
So here's a good example. And this was something I was just thinking about when you were talking about focus.
I know, I saw you frantically looking for the book.
Yeah, I was looking on my bookshelf because I knew it's somewhere on here.
I thought you were looking for a copy of the Peterkin paper.
No.
I was thinking it was going to appear.
I didn't find the book. It's somewhere on this bookshelf in front of me. But anyway, let's say that in a relationship, you want to make sure that your spouse is really happy. And you just read that book and you think to yourself, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm speaking in her love language on a regular basis. Well, if you have that book on your, let's say, bedside table, so every time you wake up in the morning or every time you, put it somewhere that you're going to walk past, if you have that in your field of view on a regular basis, and you've made a decision that you're going to be practicing what you learned, then you're more likely to keep that in focus. So that's just something I was thinking about in terms of relationships.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Again, it's keeping things in the foreground until the neurons make the connection and it becomes habituated. Once it's habituated, it becomes easy, right?
Yeah. Another idea maybe for focus would be, let's say every time you catch yourself doing a negative, let's call it a negative behavior, so reacting inappropriately to something that your spouse does during an argument or... Well, let's just stick with that. I can come up with an infinite number of things that are bad reactions, but bad reaction. Every time you catch yourself, maybe you do some sort of pattern interrupt and then remind yourself what the more appropriate behavior is. Do that behavior and then that
switch to the other behavior.
Yeah, it's sort of like the push it away, say, stop. No, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, that's before.
That's before.
Now I'm doing this.
Yeah, immediately apologize. Let's say if you're right in front of your spouse when you do it and say, now let's just cut. Let's take it from the top again and let's do that again. You say what you said and I'm going to react differently this time.
Buddy, that's a really important thing. And what you nailed there, that's such a good point. Is the jumping in immediately, breaking a pattern immediately. My wife and I were having a discussion about a week ago, and just a normal discussion. And I made some comment, and it was not anything inappropriate, but I realized that it's something that could be taken as a cruel, like a shot at her for no reason. And so I just stopped instantly and I said, just before you say anything, I said, I totally apologize for that comment. That's probably come across in a way I did not intend. And I instantly undid the damage. And she said, I accept that. Thank you. Whereas if I let it fester, so we're always back to the instant focusing, severing things and moving forward instantly. And that's why we do empowering questions on this show, right?
Yes, it is.
Because when we ask you an empowering question, it enables you to step outside your situation with a new focus. And if you like that question, and if that one works for you, gosh, we hear from people all around the world who've used the empowering questions and say that their life has been transformed as a result of making these simple shifts in what they focus on. If you do this, the changes will happen for you too. And if you get a question from us that you like, apply it. Like, don't wait for something to happen. Use the empowering question. See what answers your unconscious mind gives you and begin to apply them. So, I said, you mentioned clean language a couple of minutes ago. And one of the things you and I have used for years, Chris, with coaching people and teaching people is the magic question, which is what do you want? Which identifies the target state and moves you out of the problem state. Remember, in life, when things go wrong, somebody has lost track of the target state. You're stuck in the problem state, which is the present state. And the answers are never found in the present state because
the target state needs to be what's in focus.
What's in focus. That's right.
So they're focusing on the wrong thing when they've lost track of the target state.
Yes. And if simply focusing on the target state, which is what goal setting does, causes the reticular activating system to kick in. But we no longer, because of clean language, David Grove's wonderful thing I recommend everyone study, we no longer say, what do you want? That's just not routine.
What do you want to have happen? Or
what would you like to have happen?
I've been using that, Mike, in so many. I heard you use that simple modification of the question recently. I can't remember when it was. I think it was an email that somebody sent us complaining about something. And you said, what would you like to have happen?
Right.
And it worked brilliantly. And I just thought, I love the phrasing of that question.
How are we for time here? What do we got?
are at the 30-minute mark.
Okay, we better be fast. I want to just wrap this up with this point. We have mentioned to our listeners worldwide that we think it's really useful, instead of setting goals for the year, to choose a state, an important state, and attach that to a word. Yes. So a single word for your year. And I had used alacrity before, which means
alacrity,
a willing, happy, cheerful response. So my wife, instead of having me sit around and not vacuum when she needed me to, yes, folks, I admit it, I vacuum from time to time.
Honey, I want you to vacuum the main floor of the house.
I say with alacrity. I jump up and do it right away. It's amazing how much that helped my marriage.
Oh, instead of I'll do it later. And I modeled that from you.
It's a good one.
Guess what? Alacrity hasn't been my word of the year, but it still works. It's still running as a program.
Good for you, buddy, because it hasn't been working for me.
Oh, no.
And what happened was I changed my word to flow, which is a very Taoist thing. I always call myself, a Presbyterian Taoist. Go with the flow.
Flow doesn't really work with alacrity.
It didn't work for me because I'd be in the flow. My wife would want me to feed the cats or do something, and I'd just be in this flow state. Yeah, whatever. And
I'll get around to it, honey.
I know, and I've had to rein it in. Flow might be a great state for somebody who's a workaholic, which I'm not.
I just hit the solar plexus.
I'm not a workaholic by any means, but I've switched back to alacrity, because my focus was disappearing since I picked the word flow.
Yeah.
And my wife has already noticed the difference. Find your word of the year, guys. Make it a word that empowers you, though. And it's not too late to start using it.
Absolutely. My word for 2017 has been strength, and I am tremendously enjoying the results of that so far.
It'll kick in, it'll kick in at some point. Still future. Just kidding. You're the strongest guy I know. Now, listen, buddy, you've got an empowering question for us today.
Yes, I do. In what area of your life is focus lacking? And what will happen when you re-engage it? What area of your life will benefit from much more focus? And how will you re-engage it today?
Fantastic. That's a good one to review. You want to just mention about the UK thing coming up?
Yeah. So as we wrap up this podcast, 86 of Brain Software, let's just quickly mention that we are going to be in the UK doing a 2-day training in hypnosis and mindscaping. It's actually going to be a mindscaping certification. Carl Smith, our friend from the London area, actually, no, sorry, my mistake, not the London area, the Suffolk, UK area.
Correct.
Is bringing us in. And so we're going to the UK Hypnosis Convention or conference. Can't remember the proper name for it. But anyway, it's early November.
It's going to be awesome.
And so that's the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I believe that on the Monday, Tuesday, we are then making the journey over to Suffolk. And we're doing the training for Carl and his bunch of people, which is going to be amazing. And right now, actually, I don't think we have an official page set up for it. But if you head on over to the UK Hypnosis Academy Facebook page and you look at the events on that page, you will find us there as one of the events. I think it's is it November 6th and 7th?
Yeah, somewhere.
Whatever the Monday, Tuesday.
Check it out.
And you're going to enjoy it. So if you're in the UK and you've been dying for us to get down there, we are coming.
And we're almost sold out.
Yeah, we're definitely getting there. So you can talk to us at the conference in London, or come to the class that we're teaching in on the Monday, Tuesday.
And hang out with old Chris Thompson and Uncle Mike. We'll have a nice pint of beer together.
A warm pint.
A nice warm pint of beer. It'll be lovely.
No, I'm not drinking beer anymore. Well,
no, me neither. One a year. I got a metaphor for you, buddy. This is a metaphor I call the missing memories. When I was a little kid, I had an Irish hooded rat. It was white with a gray head and shoulders.
Uh-oh.
And I had a white rat as well. They were named Montmorency and Harris, which makes me think of Clovis and Tricholonia, your daughters.
Nice.
But anyway, these two rats, Harris and Montmorency, were really nice. Harris knew his name. I'd run in yelling, Harris, Harris. They'd jump up and hold onto the bars. And I also had an orange cat, a real tough scrapper by the name of Honey, because he was honey colored. And you know the weird thing, Chris? At some point, those pets must have died. I have no recollection of that happening. I have no recollection. I'm an animal person.
But you don't remember losing them.
And especially the cat that we had from 1960 until about 1974. I have no idea what happened. There's just a blank in my mind. I had the cat, then I didn't. Mm-hmm. And I'm a cat guy, as you know. I had my pet rats. And then I didn't. And as I began to think about this, I realized that in 1977, which 40 years ago, almost to the day, when my mom died of cancer in our townhouse in Toronto, she was dying for 3 months. And of that entire time, when we had a hospital bed brought in for her, she didn't do chemo or radiation. It was pointless in her case. She slipped away quietly. And I have almost no memory of that 3 months, even though I was in my 20s. I wasn't a little kid.
Yeah.
I remember about 40 seconds of that 3 months. So my unconscious mind has somehow deleted the memories for its own reason.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to Brain Software. This has been episode 86 with Mike Mandel, and I'm Chris Thompson. Head on over to MikeMandelHypnosis.com. Sign up for the free stuff we've got for you on our blog, and you will enjoy it tremendously and make your life awesome. Keep listening to this podcast. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review if you think we deserve it. See you in the next episode.
Hey, Scro, what's happening, man? Listen, I'm back already. People are writing to me all the time. They're putting me on the show more often, man, which really grooves. It just grooves the bat. Hey, somebody wrote in, they said, hey, Dave, you're the people's physicist, man. Well, why should we listen to you, dude? I said, well, because I don't have a PhD, but I got an STD from MIT. It was awesome. You know, I also got a degree from Louisiana South District University. That's LSDU. Most wonderful thing, man. I just heard from a science teacher who teaches out of Boston. He said, Dave, you're my favorite professor, man. I wish I could be like you, but I got to teach physics this year for the first time. How can I make sure the kids are going to listen to me? I said, well, man, don't lord it over them. Play some Grateful Dead, little Jimi Hendrix in the class, man. You got to be where they are, man. You got to groove talk. You got to be with the scene, daddy-o. You got to be hip to the jive, man. You got to learn all the modern hipster words like 23 skidoo and kiss you later. I'm eating a potato, man. That'll see you through. Okay, kill Pazixum.